everybody. $1 Million Wednesday, my favorite day of the week, and I'm glad you guys are joining us for it. I have my co-host on with me, Kim. Kim, what's going on?
Hey, I'm really good. Thanks, Greg. I'm really excited for this week's session.
Did you do your homework last week?
I did. I did lots of homework, and I even did a vlog update about it.
You're right, you did. Which is a good reminder. If you guys haven't already subscribed to our YouTube, I'd recommend you do so because we are now starting to post videos in between $1 Million Wednesdays. So Kim did this really cool vlog update on Friday. Is that right?
Yeah, I recorded it on Friday, and we published it on Monday for everyone to see.
Nice. So she gave you an update of how her product research was coming along. Anyway, I recommend you go to our YouTube channel and check it out, and don't forget to subscribe because then you get notified of cool videos like that. So, if you haven't heard about the $1 Million Case Study, Kim, has anyone not heard about the $1 Million Case Study at this point?
I hope not. I hope everybody's heard about it.
Give us a rundown. What is the $1 Million Case Study? If you're just joining for the first time, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay, so we are finding products to sell on Amazon and launching them, and we're aiming to make $1 million worth of revenue, and we're giving all of the profits to charity. And we're documenting every step of the way so that you can follow along in real time and repeat in our footsteps and learn from our successes and our mistakes, and hopefully launch your own successful business.
Nice. You did a better job than I did. That's your job from now on to give the intro there. So guys, in this time right now, we're doing it in Europe, which is really exciting. So if you've been following along, you know we launched our jungle sticks, which were bamboo marshmallow sticks. Then we launched a hooded baby towel called Jungle Snugs. This time we're doing something a little bit different. We're launching a product in the EU market, more specifically in the UK. Kim's the one doing all the work this time, and what's really cool about that is she's never launched a product before on Amazon, and I'm acting as a mentor to her. And this is really cool for you guys because she has a lot of the same questions as what you would have for me. So you can kind of pretend like you're Kim, and she's the one asking me the questions. And what's really good about that is I've realized some of these things have started to become like a little bit second nature to me. So I forget and I leave some of the steps out. So that's where Kim comes in because we'll be watching over her shoulder as she does some things. And she'll be asking me questions, and you guys get to follow along with that. So with that being said, am I forgetting anything before we get started, Kim?
Nope, good to go.
All right, sweet. So that being said, I am going to switch to my slides. It looks like you guys should be able to see them now. So this is session number 3 of the Europe edition. So I think we did like 20, maybe 22 sessions of what was kind of like part 1 where we launched that product in the US store. But it's all right if you've never seen a single one of our webinars before. You can follow along with just the $1 Million Case Study Europe version because we are starting all the way from the beginning and going through the whole process again. So sessions 1 and 2, we did product research. We hadn't finalized our particular product yet. So today we're going to be talking about how we can finalize this product. And along with that, one of the things that we needed to be able to finalize our decision is to figure out the cost of our product and what our profit margins would be. That's one of the things that it was kind of like one of the last things for us to look at to really narrow it down. So I think Kim started with like 43 products. Last week we narrowed it down to I think 5. And then this week we're going to be talking about those a little bit more and putting in that final missing piece of the puzzle, which is our profit margins, which to calculate that we need to get real prices from suppliers. Every week we're doing a giveaway. You can enter at junglescout.com/giveaway. And even if you're watching a replay of this, we're selecting a winner every single week for all of 2017. So don't ever feel like it's been too late. I'd recommend you guys enter because you can win a Jungle Scout extension or a web app. You get featured on our website, and we're giving away free t-shirts as well. These are the winners from this last week. They both submitted pictures of them jungle scouting. So this is Brendan and Ayelet. So congratulations, guys. You win. Amelia from the Jungle Scout team will be in contact to get you guys hooked up with your free stuff. Same thing with Jonathan. He put out this tweet of he's going along with the $1 Million journey. And yeah, hopefully you guys are following along with us and him. So this is where we're at right now. I discussed this a little bit at the beginning, but session 1, we generated a long list of product ideas. Like I said, I think Kim had 43 in there. Session 2, it was more advanced research, or not necessarily advanced, but more so like narrowing it down into a shorter list, because 43 products would be too many products to list. This week, we're going to be talking about our profit calculations, outreach to suppliers, and selecting our product. This is where we're at right now. I grabbed this number from Inside Fetcher, which is a profit analytics tool. So we've sold about $310,000 in revenue so far. That number is a little bit lower than what Seller Central shows, because Fetcher actually does remove like promotions and returns from that. But nonetheless, we're about 1/3 of the way to our $1 million goal. So we're off to a great start. But as I said before, I'm not a very patient person, so we need more products, and that's why we're going to be launching one in the UK right now. If you want to catch up with some of the previous episodes, this is where you can find them, junglescout.com/MDCS for $1 million case study, and you can put -US to check out part 1, or -Europe to follow along with this journey as we launch this product in Europe. So today, by the end of the episode, this is all the things that you guys will have seen and understand. So we'll be taking a look at Kim's advanced product research findings. So as of last week, we gave you guys some homework. She did that homework like the great student she is. Good job, Kim. And we'll be looking at this, and we'll be going over it. I think she has some questions for me that I told her to hold off and wait to ask these live, to make sure that you guys get the answers that I give to her for those. We'll also be talking about how to outreach to suppliers. These are factories, mostly in China, in order to get accurate pricing for these products that we want to sell. We'll be going over how to figure out profits, and yes, we'll be factoring in VAT. I know we've had a lot of comments kind of like during these live sessions and the blog, that people were worried that, well, we weren't factoring in VAT or VAT, or we weren't going to be paying for it. Yes, we absolutely were. That just wasn't something that we needed to know at the time. And just while we're on that note, I'm just going to say real quickly, guys, we won't leave out any pieces of this puzzle. I promise that to you. Okay. So, I see like in the chat box, people will say, well, like, wait a second, like you haven't gone over like pay-per-click yet, or you haven't gone over like how to take good pictures yet, or set up your listing. That's because we're not to that part yet. Throughout the Europe edition of the $1 Million Case Study, there will probably be like 20 sessions. So we can only cover so much in every hour. So, like that was an important part when we were looking for what has high demand and low competition yet. That it just wasn't a factor yet. So that's why we weren't thinking about it. We weren't worried about it yet. But as of today, since now we're calculating, hey, are these products going to have good margins or not? That's when VAT is important, because that is something that gets taken out of our overall revenue number. So that's why we kind of held off today to talk about that. I'm not looking at the chat box right at this second, but I imagine someone else is probably asking, like, what about like the legal structure in the UK or in the EU and that? I know you guys have lots of questions about all that, and I promise we'll go over it. However, after we choose what product we want to sell and we hire a factory to do it, it takes like 30 days for them to manufacture this stuff. So that gives us at least 30 days. And then once you factor in having to wait for our photography to get done, having to wait for shipping, which we do by oceans in almost a month, we're talking about like we have like 6 or 8 weeks after we choose our product. So that's why we're not getting to that stuff yet. 6 or 8 weeks is plenty enough time to figure out our legal structure for the EU. So it's not important yet. We're trying to do this like in a timeline that works out the best. So yeah. So with that being said, Kim, do you want to go ahead? This is the homework that we gave last week. So Kim, do you want to go ahead and I'll switch over to your screen and you can show us this spreadsheet and you can ask your questions?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I can see your screen. Looks good.
Awesome. So this is the homework spreadsheet from last week's session. And I did go over some of the things that I found in my vlog. So if you haven't seen that, then go check that out too. So basically in this, I'm looking for lots of different things like competition, the depth of the market, whether I can improve the product, and taking a look at what other sellers are doing with similar products on Amazon. And I just want to kind of point out some of the main things that I found and tell you what I think are the well, for me now is what is my top 2 products instead of top 5, and get Greg's second opinion on that to make sure that I'm going in the right direction. So I'll go down in order. So first of all, cardboard boxes, on the face of it, I thought they would be very easy to manufacture. But when I looked on Alibaba, there was actually not that many sellers. A lot of the sellers were doing like gift boxes rather than cardboard boxes. And all of the sellers also fulfilled by merchant. So they weren't using FBA. And a few people have written into us and said, maybe it's because they're actually quite heavy. And when I looked into it, I think the FBA fees were pretty high. So although they're a cheap product to manufacture, it's still, from my early calculations, it still didn't look like the most profitable product. So this one didn't make it to my top 2. Greg, would you agree with that based on those criteria?
Yeah, I think that's all good insight. It all makes sense to me. So yeah, I think that's a good call.
Awesome. So moving on then to the sleeping bag product idea. So the most interesting thing that I found about this was that there were a lot of product listings that were poor, that had poor titles, no keywords, not very good images, short features and descriptions. And so I know that we are going to create the best listing. So that's a really good opportunity in the competitive landscape for us with this particular product. And also the demand for this was one of the highest out of my top 5. So this one seems really promising. And from my early searches on Alibaba, there seems to be loads of suppliers, which is really good. And also the seasonality is actually very low. So I thought maybe it would be more sales in summer, but it seems there's actually very solid year-round demand for sleeping bags. So this one goes into one of my favorite 2 products from my top 5. And Greg, would you agree with that as well?
Yeah, all that sounds good. I'm trying to think what kind of questions the audience would have right now. Do you want to maybe talk real quick about what kind of legal issues you were looking for? Like I see that the one column is legal issues.
Yeah. So from what I can tell, obviously there's loads of sellers of sleeping bags, and some of the more unique ones may have like patents or trademarks. But from what I could tell, and from doing searches on some of the sort of European databases that you can search for, there's no reason why we would run into any legal issues if we manufactured a sleeping bag.
Cool.
But however, moving on to the full face snorkel, this was one where I really wasn't certain. It was a very unique design and it's made of plastic. So I presume it would need some sort of like mold or something to create those products. So I was very much more worried about the full face snorkel when it came to legal issues. And I think that would be a product where if we were going to move forward with it, we would want to seek legal advice. And so I didn't sort of shortlist that to my top 2 based on that. But it did still have good demand. So, if we did want to invest in legal advice, then it could still be viable. But at this point, it's not one of my top products.
And I think a good kind of one of the good things we can take away from that, Kim, is that like you had like 5 good products kind of like to choose from here, right? So it's like, would the full face snorkel mask been like a really good product and really successful? Like, yeah, quite possibly so. But it's like, do I want to have to like waste the time of doing like extra like patent research instead of just like picking one of these other ones? So that's like definitely like something to think about, right? It's like, with all these good products, it's like, I don't want to, waste brain power on that.
Yeah, for sure. And also this product had like medium seasonality, whereas other products had low seasonality and, good opportunity to improve on what the competitors are doing. So it's almost like, for me, it was like a balancing act. Like, first of all, all of these criteria that we've been researching for the past 2 weeks, which sort of ticks the most boxes, but then also which is most suitable for like our business and what we want to do. So, like we said last week, if you're a smaller seller, you might go for something with less competition. But for the purposes of this case study, I'm actually looking for things with higher demand. So it's a balancing act between looking at all of the criteria that we've been over and deciding what works for you. But yeah, I agree. Like all of these could be good options. They just all have their own unique pros and cons, I guess. Travel pillow was the next one, and I actually found that there was no sellers bidding on PPC, or at least if they were being outbid by a big brand Silent Night on a banner ad. So I thought it might be an opportunity where we could go in with really strong PPC campaign and therefore get our product in front of the eyes of lots of consumers. So that was really promising. And another promising thing about this one was that it would be really easy to bundle it and add additional products. And again, the seasonality was low. So my top two products were actually sleeping bags and travel pillow. And again, they're both fairly easy to manufacture. Lots of suppliers on Alibaba. They're both made of fabric, which makes it a relatively easy product to manufacture. So that one made it to my top two as well. And then finally, the baby sling wrap. I actually, like I said last week, I do really love this product. And I think it is a really good idea, like they all are. But the main thing for me for this product was that it had much lower demand than the sleeping bags, or well, not much lower, but a little bit lower demand than the sleeping bags and the travel pillow. So for our case study, we've got a huge goal. We've got a target of 1 million. So I didn't shortlist it, but that was pretty much the only reason, because it was easy to bundle, easy to manufacture, seemed like a really nice product. Any other thoughts on that, Greg?
Those are all good insights. So thanks for sharing those. I see a little bit of chatter in the chat box. People are wondering about like different like regulations or like inspections that like the EU would require for these different things. That's something that we'll look into a little bit deeper before we like place the order with the factory, just to make sure that like for example, like if we need flame retardant outside to the sleeping bag, that's something that the factories are actually pretty good about that. If you ask them, like, hey, if you've imported or if you've exported these to the EU before, are there any requirements that you're aware of? Oftentimes they actually are pretty knowledgeable about that type of stuff, but at the same time, it's not up to them to know for sure. So we'll do our own due diligence. And I mean, with Google these days, it's so easy to figure this stuff out, right? So if anyone's worried about that, don't be. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a later session. Yeah, right now we're just trying to narrow it down to like our top one or two products, which it sounds like Kim's done. So nice work on that.
Thanks, Greg. I'm looking forward to seeing how we can figure out the profitability of them so that we can make that decision.
Right on. All right. So you want to turn it back over to me then? I'll go over a little bit of this other stuff.
Sure.
All right. So, today, wherever you're joining us in the world, we're going to be talking about contacting some of these factories and giving you some tips to do so. However, I know a lot of you guys are at the end of this session, I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions. However, we have a lot of content to go over in an hour. So as far as like right now, what's concerned with this particular step is to understand how much this product costs in order to understand whether or not we would have good margins for it. Okay. So with all these products, where we're going to find someone to manufacture them is on Alibaba. On Alibaba, the majority of the factories are from China. And I think that's like intimidating for a lot of people to think like to do business with someone in China. We have a pretty worldly crowd that tunes in for these. So, for some of you guys living in Asia, you might think, hey, nothing, I'm not worried about that at all. People I know like in North America, like I grew up in the States. To us, I think, or it's like a lot of people in the States, it seems like a very like far off place and like far off culture. So I'm going to talk to you just real quick about Alibaba and finding factories on there. Next week's when we're really going to go in depth on this a little bit more. But the reason we need to start thinking about this now and start finding factories now, and Kim's been doing this, is because we need to get good pricing. So if you go to Alibaba and you just make a search, it does give you kind of like a price range of what these get manufactured at. So for example, we'll say like if we were to do like travel pillows, it'd be like $3 to like $10 or something like that. So it's like, all right, well, like we kind of have like a rough idea, but it's not like a great number. So in order to do like our real profit calculations, we need better numbers than that. And that's why we need to contact some of these factories. So I'm going to let you look over my shoulder in a minute as I to give you like an example of how to contact these factories, but just a few things that like I think these are like the most common questions people have is like, do I need to speak Chinese? The answer to that's no. 99% of factories have like English speaking sales reps at them. So if you speak, I mean, obviously you're tuning into this webinar, so I assume everyone watching this speaks some English. So English will work fine when you're communicating through Alibaba as well. Keep in mind that isn't most of their first languages, so like it might be kind of like broken English you get back, and that's something we'll talk about more next week. But yes, you can communicate with them in English. Just some like other like bigger picture things I want you guys to kind of like understand is so I guess I'll first off by saying like, so let's see, I sold on Amazon, I think for like probably 2 years, maybe even 3 years before I ever went to China. Since then, thankful that I've had the opportunity to go to China multiple times. I've visited some of the factories, I've gone to the trade shows, met with suppliers that, were manufacturing my stuff. It's a very nice experience, and it's like I've learned a lot from that. However, it's not required at all. Like I said, I sold for like 2 years and tens of, maybe even tens of thousands of products on Amazon before I even went there. So it's not required. But through that, I kind of like got, like a better idea of how it works. But I can just teach you that to you guys over the webinar. So, with like all like a few things we're going to keep in mind, like when we're talking to these factories is business culture in China is a little bit different than a lot of the Western world. I think like a lot of people have like this really like negative connotation about like there's a lot of people out there to like scam you or like things to go wrong. And of course there is some of that out there, but it's like it's such a very small percentage that like it's something we have to be mindful of, but not like scared about. And we'll teach you how to make sure to like stay away from those scams. But of like all the orders I've ever placed like through Alibaba, I've never had cross my fingers, a single problem with like getting scammed. Again, we'll talk more on this later, but like quality of products like a little bit different. You have to be like very specific exactly what you're looking for. But yeah, so like overall Chinese business culture, these people like their ideal customer is someone they can build a long-term business relationship with. So we'll keep that in mind like when we're contacting them. As far as like payments go, I think a lot of this like scares or like a lot of people have this question. Like one of the best ways is the Alibaba escrow, which is called Alibaba Trade Insurance. Sorry, I should have put that in the slide. That's like one of my favorites because Alibaba does protect you to a certain extent. Another way you can make payments, or the most common way to make payments, is through wire transfers, which they commonly refer to as TT transfers. PayPal is somewhat accepted, but most of them only want to do this for like samples or smaller orders. And it is pretty common for them to make you pay the fee, which I think is like 3 or 5% in China if you do so. So yeah, these are just kind of like a few of the big picture things. I know there's gonna be lots of questions about all this, but for this particular week, we just need to know enough to contact these factories so we can get good price quotes. And then next week, we'll talk about how to make sure you don't get scammed, all of the, like agreements, specific things you have to say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There will be lots we talk about for this next week. So, we'll give you guys a few tips for using Alibaba. And then I think after this slide, I'm going to do a screen share so you can look at my screen and I'll show you even some more tips in there. So try using a few different keywords. For example, if we decide we want to sell the travel pillow, there's different names we could think of for this particular item, and that will help you kind of like target different factories. So, we could do like travel pillow, inflatable pillow, U-shaped pillow. What's another name for pillow? Something else. You guys get the idea. And that will help us find like different factories. I'll show you guys how to kind of like pick out the better factories using the ones that have gold suppliers. And I'll talk about that more in a second. Kim's going to give us an example about she's worked out like a really nice workflow where you can make specific factories like a favorites and then contact them all at the same time, which is good. We're going to give you guys a template that you can use to email them. I do recommend you use a dedicated email for doing this because just like any good salesperson, they are going to follow up with you a lot and for years and years to come. So like don't use your primary email address. Use like a special email for this particular project, and then anyone you choose to do business with, you can move over to like a different email address. And we're just using a Gmail. And I've never had any problems with that. I've heard people say before, like, oh, they won't take you seriously if it's just like a Gmail. It needs to be like your company email. I've always used it. No one's ever said anything about it. I've never had any problems. So, yeah. We'll also be using the messaging system inside Alibaba. If I remember right, that's the only way to contact factories on Alibaba now. So this is the email template we're going to be using. You can download it yourself at junglescout.com/session3-HW for homework. Kim will show us that spreadsheet in a few minutes. But this is what this is what Kim sent them, and this is what I recommend you guys send them. Of course, you're going to be using your own name and your own company name and your own product. But let me walk you through like what the idea of this is real quick. First of all, we're telling them who we are because remember they want to establish business relationships with people. So right away, Kim introduced herself, her name, where she's from. We're importing to the EU, or she specifically said the UK. We've attached pictures. Pictures speak 1,000 words, which is really great, especially if English isn't your first language. We've told them a little bit more about our company. Our primary sales channel will be online. We gave them a rough estimate of how many of these things we think we can sell on a yearly basis. We also gave them an idea of what our initial order would be. So Kim said 10 to 15,000 units a year. I mean, this can be like a rough estimate, right, guys? That might be like a little generous, but that's okay. They might, they might think we're a little bit bigger that way. And it's true, we'll probably place around 1,000 units for our initial order. She also did a good job of giving all of the specifications for exactly what we're looking for. So as you can imagine, like in this example, this is for the sleeping bag. By contacting sleeping bag factories, they probably make all different kinds with different outsides, different insides, different filling, different sizes, what have you, everything else. So she was specific about, we're looking for 2 different sizes. She gave a good idea of the material. And Kim, did you just look at other sellers on Amazon and that's where you got this information from?
Yeah, I was looking at other sellers and then also looking at reviews so I could figure out, how I could improve the product and make sure that it would stand out.
Cool. Yeah, so that's where she's getting like this information from, guys. You're not a sleeping bag expert, are you, Kim?
No, I'm definitely not.
Have you ever slept in a sleeping bag?
I have, and I used to work in a camping store when I was a student.
Man, you are a sleeping bag expert then. I didn't know that about you.
Not really.
Okay. But you have slept in a sleeping bag before, so that's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, she just gave lots of details here, more specifically what we're looking for. And the reason for that, guys, is if we just emailed factories and said, hey, we're looking for a price quote for a sleeping bag, that doesn't give the factory enough information to give you even like a good ballpark. Because imagine, I'm sure there's some that are made out of like really cheap, crappy material, and like they might be a kid's bag or a kid's sleeping bag that doesn't come in a bag and doesn't come in packaging and doesn't even have a tag on it or whatever else. They might try to give you the quote for that just like it seems like the cheapest. So you need to be as specific as possible when you send them this particular email. And then she asked 5 questions. I really like the way I really like numbering each question like this. This makes it very easy for a factory to respond to each individual question. If you kind of like hide questions in blocks of text, it's not as effective. So Yeah, we have 5 questions, and then a good factory would respond to all 5 of these questions and hopefully even number them. That would be like a good sign from a factory that they understand all of them, they're answering all of our questions, they read our email, etc. So, yeah. Let's see. So we'd recommend you reach out to a lot of suppliers. Initial contact is mostly a quantity game. Probably like only half of the suppliers are even going to respond to you. Of those half, you'll get some really crappy responses. Other ones will be like much better responses. So our initial plan is going to be outreach to a lot of people on Alibaba and then find the best ones from there. Recommend attaching an image of a similar product to give them a visual. Keep an eye on, so I think in this email, let's see. No, Kim didn't give her email address, but you guys can if you want. She put in here, keep an eye on your inbox and the Alibaba messaging system. Because that's right. If I remember right, when you message a supplier on Alibaba, they also get your email address. And to be honest, the Alibaba messaging system I think is really buggy and janky. So I would prefer like after initial contact to go ahead and move it over to email. But you can do whatever works well for you. Or something else that I like was like to move like the high quality suppliers that are a good potential into email. So yeah, Kim's going to kind of show us how she sorts this into like different folders to kind of keep organized, especially if you're doing outreach for like 5 different products to try to get price quotes for all of them. And then we'll talk about this more next week, but we're going to be ruthless on all the suppliers we cut and only save the cream of the crop for the ones that we're going to contact. So you guys should be able to see Alibaba now. So if you haven't been here before, Alibaba.com. It's still my favorite place to find factories. Some other ones are like globalsources.com. I'm kind of forgetting. Like there's other ones that like mostly the Chinese use, but they're all written in Chinese. Anyway, I pretty much always do all my research on Alibaba. It still like has the most factories on it. So let's see. We can do like travel pillow as an example search. And if you guys haven't used Alibaba before, you'll be amazed about how many factories are on here and how much stuff is on here. It's crazy. There's like everything you can ever imagine, I feel like, is on Alibaba, which is really good because we're not inventing anything, right? So right away, I see a whole bunch of different products here. What I like to do is I like to click on the suppliers tab, because if you stay on the products tab, then like this factory right here will have like multiple these are actually sponsored, but down here they'll have like multiple lines of the same factory. We're just at this point we're looking for factories to contact, because like our product's probably not going to be the exact same as anyone else. We're going to probably make mild modifications to it, whether of course like the packaging or like the fabric or the size or anything else. So I click on the suppliers tab. At this point, you can see there's almost 3,000 factories that are showing up for the keyword of travel pillow. Something I like to do, I like to go ahead and click Gold Supplier. Gold Supplier, it's my understanding all you have to do to become a Gold Supplier is just pay Alibaba like a little bit of money each year, maybe $100 or something. I don't know. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a high quality factory. All this means is they have like a little bit more street cred. They're definitely not just like Joe Schmo who just put up one listing here and it's his first day. Something else is kind of nice. You can see how many years they've been a gold supplier. So like this one says 13 years, 8 years. So this at least means that this factory's been around for some time, because the past 13 years they paid Alibaba like $100 to have a little gold badge. I think Alibaba might make them fill out some forms. I don't know. Maybe I have to get on the phone call, but big picture here is it's easy to get the gold badge, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's better than not having any gold badge at all. If there's still a ton of suppliers like there is for us, you can check this trade assurance if you want. Like I said earlier, this is my favorite payment method. This is actually probably only like, maybe this is 2 years old now, but this hasn't been around forever on Alibaba, and it's really nice because it's an escrow service. If you're not familiar with how those work, you pay money into the escrow service. Alibaba like holds it. I forget all like the exact triggers on how they release or whatever, but essentially Alibaba protects you to make sure that you at least get your merchandise. If your merchandise shows up and the boxes are smudged or something, it's not necessarily going to cover that, But this would at least protect you from, making sure you get your merchandise. So I checked both those, and I still have tons of suppliers, so that's fine. I'm going to keep trade assurance checked. It's not a huge flag if they don't have trade assurance, but now that this has been around for a couple of years, more and more companies are doing, more and more of these factories do have these. So at that point, some of the other things that we need to be thinking about and looking for in a high quality supplier is, where do they export their goods to? So quality standards in North America and the EU are going to be higher than a factory who exports a lot of their goods to like the Middle East or Africa. Okay. So that's just the way it is. So it's a good sign if someone exports most of their goods to these regions that have higher quality standards. Like this one says 71% North America, 10% to Western Europe. So both those are good signs. If I look at, let's see, or domestic market again would be quality expectations in China is not as high as what they are in North America or Europe. Yeah, it looks like most of these, 13% Southeast Asia, but that's not too large. But yeah, like Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, generally when they export to those regions, you'll see some suppliers do a lot of it. It's I'm sure there's always exceptions to this rule, but in general, it's usually lower quality goods at a lower price. So I'd recommend to just work with factories who are used to exporting to North America and the EU, and they're used to our particular quality standards. So that's one good thing to look for. Yeah, Alibaba gives you a little bit more information. Now that trade assurance has become more popular, you can get an idea of how much money this would only be transactions through trade assurance. So I'm sure if you talk to a factory, I don't know what percent would go through to trade assurance, but it's probably like a relatively low amount. So yeah, you can kind of get an idea of like how much money they've done. So it's like quite a bit, $260,000 worth in the past 6 months through trade assurance. This one's over $450,000. So these are all like good signs that these are pretty legitimate factories. If you find a factory and they don't have a gold badge, they've never used trade assurance, like that alone wouldn't be a red flag. But if they didn't have all this stuff, they said they mostly export to the lower quality or countries that expect lower quality goods, etc. That would be like something someone I would prefer to stay away from and use a different factory. Okay. One other thing. Oh, I was going to also talk about the difference between a factory as opposed to the word slipped my mind, Kim. Trade. I'm having like a brain fart right now, but
do you mean a manufacturer or a
I think it slipped your mind too. Anyway,
trading company, is it?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
A trading company. So some people are just in the business of kind of connecting the person like us with a factory, and this would be like a trade company. In general, we'd like to stay away from trade companies because they're going to mark up the goods. And my experience with them in the past is they normally take longer too, because you're trying to communicate something through someone else. So all communication takes a little bit longer. They also are going to attach a fee on top of that. So ideally we work directly with the factory and not a trade company. Thanks for that, Kim. I forgot about. Oh, so some factories, and again, we're going to cover this in more depth next week. I'm just trying to give you guys the big picture here. Some factories will specifically say they're trading companies. Other listings on Alibaba will not. But there's a few ways you can tell. If they're right away they say they're a trading company, that's obviously a dead giveaway. You can specifically ask them, and it's my belief that most will be pretty honest with you. Another thing you can do, and this is actually the best tell sign of whether or not they're a trading company or not, is my friend Gary Huang likes to call this like the common thread test. And if we look at, let me see, if we look at the types of products this particular factory makes, does it make sense that all of these would be produced in the same factory? It looks like everything they have here is for like luggage or travel. So that's like pretty good about passing like the common thread test to me. A good example of this, actually, I'd be a little skeptical of this one. I would actually think, to me, actually, I would probably guess that this was a trading company. And so the reason I say that, this makes a lot more sense, like if you guys ever get a chance to like go to China. But like when I go to China, say for instance, I were to visit our hooded baby towel factory. This is a factory that's dedicated to making towels. So they sell like hooded baby towels. I haven't been to it, but I can imagine, I'm sure of this. They make like hooded baby towels. They make bath towels. They make towels to dry your car, like whatever else. They have like big machines that are meant to like sew towels or to dye the fabric or to cut it or something like that. So if you can imagine, it's like a big factory with all that type of equipment. I'm pretty sure this is actually a trading company, because to make like these water bottles, this would be like a machine that like injects the plastic like into a mold. And then to make, let's see, like to make these things like, okay, like an injection machine thing, but then like to wrap the tape around it, it's like, all right, that might be believable. But we landed on this because we're looking for travel pillows. So it's like, to me, this particular company doesn't do a great job meeting the common thread test. It's possible that they are the factory, but I would be a little bit skeptical. And then actually this one right here actually does say a trading company. And it's pretty common for them to say manufacturer and trading company. That's why you have to sometimes ask. So like what that would mean would be like, oh yeah, we do make the water bottles, but the pillows we don't make in-house. You know, like our friend down the street makes those. Let's just look at one other one real quick to see if I can find one that would be like a, in my opinion, like pass the common thread test really well. Product categories. Okay, so to me, this one's a little bit better. I would think that they do make all of these, because these are all. Let's look at some of these. It's a lot of braces. Yeah, we can kind of look at these. You can kind of go through and look at these at like different factories and the products, and just try to think of yourself. Like I know 99.9% of the people watching this webinar aren't like industrial engineers, like understand like how a lot of these goods are manufactured. But just like think to yourself, like would the same type of machinery make these different products, or do they sell metal water bottles as well as travel pillows as well as blankets and like stuff like that? Because it's like, okay, that stuff's very obvious that it's like a whole bunch of different stuff. So yeah, those are some of like the big picture tips I have for you guys for selecting which factories to contact. But as I said earlier, the goal of this particular webinar was to get a price for a particular product. Man, I can't speak tonight, Kim. To get a price for our particular product so we can figure out our profits. So with that being said, Kim, do you want to show us a little bit about your experience so far contacting these factories?
Yeah, sure.
All right. We can see your screen, so go for it.
Awesome. So first of all, I just wanted to walk through this week's template for this week's homework. So I have it open here. So this first tab this is the exact same template that I've been using so far. I've just taken out like my name and all that kind of stuff. So anything in bold, you just need to enter your own information. And then in the second tab, I've created a sheet where I can start to fill in like all of the details that when I get answers from these suppliers, just so that I can look at a glance. I mean, you could just have this in your emails, but generally speaking, like the emails come as a big block of text, and I just find it easier to put all the information into a spreadsheet so I know where I'm at and I can make my own notes for each individual supplier. And then just real quick, there's a third tab for this week. I won't show it you now, to do with profit calculations. Greg's going to show us that shortly. And then I've just put in the previous two tabs there. That's from the previous 2 weeks research, just so you can paste all your information in if you've been following along, and so that you've got everything in one place. So with that being said, if we just go over to Alibaba, so I mean, it's actually really, really easy to use. That was the main thing that I found. Like Greg said, you can search for lots of different types of things. Like here right now, I've done a search for sleeping bags, and then I want to be on the suppliers tab, not the products tab. And I actually have already contacted a bunch of suppliers with the goal of getting a better view of the cost to manufacture this type of product so that I can figure out some profit calculations. But actually, now that Greg's given us all the advice that he's just shared, there's definitely more work for me to do in terms of assessing the suppliers that I've already reached out to, and then also maybe searching and finding some more that I can message. So here's the way that I go about it. So if I'm looking through and I see like a supplier that I like, obviously you can click on each supplier and take a look at their profile. And then if I see one that I like, you can just hit favorites. And, oh, sorry, I've signed out. Sign back in. Oh, yeah, I thought I'd added that one before. So that one was already in the favorites. Maybe if I want to add this one, I can add it to the favorites, and it will just automatically go into your favorites, which is up in the corner here. And when I say it's easy to use, the website can be a little janky sometimes, but in terms of messaging suppliers, it is super easy. So in here, I've got a whole bunch of sleeping bags. That's what I've been searching for. You can create groups here. So I've got a sleeping bag group. I can add, you just go move to and then put it into your group. And then so you can, if you're looking for, you're researching 5 different products, you can group those really easily. And then once I've got this, my template, and I mean, you can paste this into a Word doc or whatever's easiest to add all of your own information. I would probably advise that. And then you can just go in, contact supplier, and literally just copy and paste your text into here. You've got a little bit of formatting so you can make it look a bit prettier. And then here's where you add attachments. So if you want to add some photos, which is, as Greg said, it's advisable, because then the supplier has a visual aid to figure out what kind of product it is that you want. And and that's it. And then you can send the inquiry. And then from there, when you get responses, I found that they either respond directly to your email. And so if you go into your account settings in Alibaba, you can put you can change your profile information. So you can put a little bit more in there about you as a seller, or, add a bit of information like your email address, or they might respond to you within the messaging center. But either is fine. So far, I've had quite a few responses actually. Some were good, some were less good. And I've made a little label for myself in Gmail, because I'm using Gmail. And I've put all of the emails for the sleeping bags into one folder. So again, if I'm researching 5 different products, I can have all my different folders. And then I can look at all my emails in here. And even I tend to find that even if they do reply within the Alibaba system, you'll still get an email as well. So you can check both. But yeah, as Greg said, we are going to look into what to look for in these email responses and how to pick a good supplier next week. But that just shows that even before I had all of Greg's advice this week, I was able with this template to just send it out to lots of suppliers and get a very sort of real idea of what the cost of each of my product ideas was going to be.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Kim. That, for this stage of the game, who cares if you end up contacting a trade company instead of a factory or something, right? For today's purposes, we're just trying to get a great price, an accurate price for this particular product. So yeah, even if, not everything that I was saying there is clear, it's there's nothing, you can't do any harm by contacting one extra factory that might end up being a crap factory anyway, right? The goal here is to get accurate pricing information.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be quicker to do it that way if you had the time to, research each factory a little bit more. Then sure, go for it. But in the template that I've shared in the second tab, this is where you can start to list, all of the factories' answers into here. So then you're going to start to get an idea of which ones may be crappy and which ones may be quite good. So yeah, there's definitely no harm, because like Greg said, they're not all going to reply, and they're not all going to be viable factories to work with either. So definitely go for more rather than less.
Yeah, all good points. You want to show everyone watching real quick how, I think it's confusing to some people how you have to make a copy of that to be able to use it. Can you just show everyone real quick?
Yep, sure. So there is actually a note here on each tab that explains how to do it in case you forget. You hit File and Make a Copy, and that will literally copy it to your Google Drive account if you have one. If you don't, then go to Download As, and you can select Excel and download it as a spreadsheet to your hard drive on your computer. So whichever way works for you.
Sweet, thanks. So give us a little like real talk here. Let me get inside, like your thoughts a little bit. How much time did it take you? Like, what were your overall thoughts? Like, was that stressful? Were there hiccups you ran into contacting the factories with the template, or what?
No, it was actually super easy. And
Kim, are you just saying this because we're on a webinar?
No. No, like once I got the template, and probably the most time consuming thing was entering my specifications here, right? So I had to do my research on what size do I want this product, what material do I want it to be, because I want to send that information up front. I don't just want to be like, can you make sleeping bags? Because I'm still going to have to do that down the line, and it confuses the manufacturers. So that was probably the most time consuming part, to do again, it's product research, figuring out, what your product is going to be like, what the size is going to be, how you're going to differentiate it from the competition. Once I'd got that nailed down, actually navigating Alibaba and just copy and pasting my template to all of these suppliers was genuinely super easy. And once you've added them to your favorites, it takes 5 minutes, just copy and paste, add some attachments, and hit send.
Cool. So for everyone watching, you think if they have 2 hours free this upcoming week, that's enough, or weekend, that's enough time to do this? Or what do you think? How many hours should they block off their weekend?
Yeah, I think a couple of hours, as long as you've already followed the homework so far and you've got really good product research behind you, then for sure, a couple of hours, you could create your own template and send it out. And then obviously next week, when we go into digging into which manufacturers are going to be the best ones to order samples from, that will probably take a little bit more time. But to actually do this part, a couple of hours should be fine.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks. All right. Do you have anything else, or should I switch over to how we calculate our profits?
Yep, we can switch over.
Sweet. All right. So with this information Kim's getting back, if we think about like what we did last week and 2 weeks ago, we went over all the criteria for finding a good product. We need something with high demand and low competition, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those things we talked about for the past 2 weeks. One of the important things in there are like good margins. So of course we need the product cost for that. That's why we're contacting these suppliers right now. These might also be the suppliers we end up using, but we need to know the price, and then we also need to take into account a few other things. So this is how I calculate my profits, okay? So what I have here is the overall, I guess, equation that I'm going to be looking at for calculating my profits is equal to the retail price. So that's what it sells for on Amazon, minus PPC and marketing, which 5% is a good estimate for that. Now, I know there's a lot of people watching this right now, probably typing in the chat box. I can't see because I'm full screen, but they're saying, my ACoS for PPC is 20%, and you only have 5% down there. ACoS, remember, that's only for products that were purchased after clicking on a particular PPC link, right? So that's not for all sales. So I get the number 5% because throughout the entire I did this earlier in this year, but throughout the entire year of 2016, for Jungle Sticks, we spent like 4.5% on PPC. When you think about it as a total amount of our revenue, right? 4.5% on PPC. And so I just round up to 5% to be like a little bit more conservative. So this is a good general cost. And I'm sure there's also people saying like, oh, wait, you didn't factor in the cost of the images. You didn't factor in that I have to drive to the post office box 5 minutes away to like pick up my sample. So just use 5%, guys. And if you want to throw in like a few other costs here, it's good. But for these, for this estimate, 5% I think is a good number. So we have the retail price minus what we're going to spend on PPC and marketing. So marketing is like pictures and giveaways and that kind of stuff. Minus our FBA fees, minus our landed costs, minus our VAT. So I'm not a VAT expert, but from my understanding, it's 20% in the UK. Depending where you're at in the EU, it could be a little bit more or a little bit less. We'll bring on a VAT expert later for this, but we're just going to assume 20% because it's good enough to get us through this stage. You can check the FBA fees. If you go to junglescout.com/FBA-calculator, the link I have on the slide here, we have a link to all. It's actually a really good page we put together to help you understand the overall cost, but also the FBA fees. So on that page, we have links to Amazon's FBA fee calculators, so you can get it straight from the source. If you have the Jungle Scout extension, it also gives you this information. So we just pulled this number off the number from the next page off the Jungle Scout extension. To calculate the landed cost, we're going to get the FOB cost or price that these factories give us. So this would be like the price that the factory gives us. They would say it's going to be $5 FOB, which means like free on board. That means that's how much it costs them to get it to the port, and then it's up to you to like ship it from there. Okay, so they get it to the port for that price. Rough estimates, these are rough, guys, is about 6 pounds per kilogram for air courier. That's like DHL or FedEx or UPS. $4 per kilogram for air cargo. That's a little bit slower. Air courier is usually fast, like 3, 4, 5 days. Air cargo is a little bit slower, like 1 or 2 weeks. And then sea shipping is the cheapest. A rough estimate for a larger order can be like a ½ pound per kilogram. However, like I said, these are rough estimates. So you can't say that, hey, I'm going to ship 5 kilograms by sea and that's going to cost me £2.50. That's not the case, because like with sea shipments, a large portion of that is going to be flat fees, like to do the customs paperwork, and it's like $70 to load it or offload it on the boat, and $30 to send it through the parking lot or whatever else. There's like all kinds of flat fees. So that's why, I'm not looking at the chat box right now, but I'm sure there's one person probably biting my head off. Like, wait a second, like I shipped something that was only 100 kilograms and it cost me more than $50. It was 300. Yes, I understand that, but these are just rough estimates we're going to use for our preliminary research right now. Before we actually pay a factory for our product, we'll actually get real shipping quotes from our freight forwarder to make sure that it works out. Okay, but for this particular equation, these will work for you guys. All right. So on the next page, we give an example of this. So the retail price, for this particular example, we're using a sleeping bag. Retail price, 27 pounds. Marketing or PPC cost for that is $135. FBA fees, we grab this out of the Jungle Scout extension for the competitor that we like the best. So it would be about the same, roughly the same size and weight as that particular competitor. So this is a good thing to judge the FBA fees off of. Again, ours might be a little bit more or a little bit less depending on if our product's a little bit heavier or a little bit lighter, or the box is a little bit larger or smaller, but it's good enough for this estimate. This is actually a real cost, I believe, that Kim got back from one of the factories is $544. The factories gave back all the prices in US dollars. We just converted it to pounds since this is the European edition. We're launching it in the UK. We'll say roughly for this, it's about 1 kilogram. So we said, a ½ pound for shipping. Duties. Let's see. I gave that duties website, right? Okay. So if you want to figure out your duties, the UK government does have a pretty user-friendly site for a government site. If you go to it, it's gov.uk/trade-tariff, and you can look up your particular product, find I forget, in the States it's called an HS code. I forget what it's called in the UK, but it's more or less, like the customs code for that particular type of product, and they'll tell you what the duties are for it. So for our particular, or for the sleeping bag example, it's going to be about 12%. That means our landed cost. When I say landed cost, this is like how much does it cost us to get the product manufactured and arrive at Amazon. So for us, the landed cost is about $665. So I put in the FOB cost, the shipping cost, the duties. We ended up with $665, 20% of the retail price for VAT. So that means our profit is going to be 27 pounds minus 135 minus 614 minus 665 minus 540 for a grand total of 7 pounds and 45 cents. Now, my go or no go for when I figured this out is my target is always 100% ROI on my landed cost. And that's like my investment, right? It costs me, let's see, my landed cost is $665. So like I have to like take out of my bank account 6 pounds and 65 cents to get one unit to the Amazon warehouse. Okay. I want to make 100% return on investment. So for every one unit that lands at Amazon that cost me £6.65, I want to make £6.65 profit. Okay. So that's what 100% ROI means. So for this particular example, I would have 112% ROI. So this gives me a little bit of room for error. If PPC costs a little bit more or whatever, right? Shipping's like a little bit more than I expected. There's a little bit of room for error. And 100% ROI is always my target. If it ends up being 90% ROI, I'll still be pretty happy. Hopefully we can get higher than this, maybe 100, 150. Those would be great numbers. So yeah, this is kind of like the equation that I would encourage you guys to use, but you can of course modify this accordingly. If you're like, hey, I want whatever, really high-end photography or whatever, so I'm going to factor in 7% for my marketing costs or whatever. So the landed cost over here on the right is the cost per unit plus shipping plus duties. So drum roll. Kim, what's your favorite product? What are we most likely to go for? I'll let you announce it.
Okay, this is exciting.
Drum roll, go.
We're going to launch sleeping bags.
If everything goes to plan, right? So
Yeah.
this is what we think we're going to launch next. Well, you tell us why, Kim. You're the one. This was your decision, not mine.
Yeah, so like I said before, it was between the sleeping bags or the travel pillows. And when it came down to it, like when I weighed everything up, like I said earlier, it is a sort of a balancing act between all our different criteria. The sleeping bags were slightly more profitable. So that's probably like the thing at the top of my list, and slightly more demand as well. They both had sort of room to enter the market in terms of the competitive landscape. But I think it was easier to differentiate ourselves with a sleeping bag than with the travel pillow ultimately. So I really think that we can, source a really, really good product and make a killer product listing and market it really well. So those were sort of my main considerations.
Cool. Yeah, right on. So yeah, like I will say, like, this is obviously Kim's favorite product. If it turns out we can't find a good factory though, it's kind of back to the drawing board, right? We'll have to choose one of your other favorites. But yeah, everything's like looking promising, over 100% ROI. I don't imagine we'll have any issues with like importing these to the UK or any like legal issues or anything. It seems like a good product and I approve. So nice job on it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, you guys need some homework. All right. So Kim showed this to you guys earlier. This right here is the link where you can download it, junglescout.com/session3-homework. We would encourage you guys to do all the same stuff that Kim has done as far as reaching out to these factories and filling out that particular template. And let's see. Oh, man, we're already 5 minutes past the hour. We had a lot to go over. We do want you guys to join us next week. Hopefully you have your homework completed by then. Next week, Kim, why don't you tell us? What are we going to be covering? What's the plan for next week's session?
So, well, I mean, I'm going to carry on with my homework too. I know I've already started the supplier outreach, but I'm going to continue with that, given all the advice you've given us today, Greg. And then, so next week we are going to like sort of dive deeper into our supplier outreach and start to take a look at some of the responses that we've got and how to be ruthless with those and how to figure out which suppliers are going to be good ones to move forwards with. Start to think about ordering samples and maybe go into a little bit more detail about how we've specced out our sleeping bag product and sort of how we came to those conclusions. So yeah, it's going to hopefully by the end of next week, we're going to be in a position where we can shortlist all of our suppliers and start to ask for samples.
Cool. Yeah, I was just looking at my phone at some of the questions that are coming in. I have it pulled up on there. We do have a number of questions. However, we try to keep all these at an hour. We're already 6 minutes past the hour. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to do any questions tonight. However, we will read through them. If you drop questions in the comment section on the YouTube replay, then we'll be more than happy to go through those and answer them. And we'll also read at all the questions that you guys put in the Facebook comments and YouTube comments and stuff right now, and try to make sure we answer all this stuff next week. So the plan right now is next $1 Million Wednesday at the same time, but I will say make sure you're on the Jungle Scout $1 Million case study email list, because the time is bound to change. We don't necessarily do it at the same time every week. So you sign up for it at junglescout.com/million. That will make sure you guys get all of the updates of our progress, how Kim's work and the sleeping bags are coming along, which is really exciting. I'm really stoked for this, if you can't tell. If you haven't already done so, please give us the heart or the thumbs up or whatever it is down there, wherever you're tuning in from, or the subscribe button on YouTube. That's what motivates. Kim, you told me before this is what gets you out of bed in the morning, right? How many YouTube subscribers we have?
Yeah, for sure.
Kim's not coming on next week if we don't get 100 YouTube subscribers and at least 100 likes on Facebook. Is that right?
Yep. We're aiming for 1 million of everything. We also want 1 million subscribers.
That's right. 1 million subscribers. All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you next week. I appreciate you for watching us, and don't forget to do your homework. Kim, I'll see you later.
See you soon.